Welcome to Catholic Champion. We are back. John Yeb and my co-host Michael Hichborn. We are talking about what is America first. That topic continues to be frontline and center as it's played out on the world stage as Trump brings peace to the world and we fight on the moral front, which is the most important part. Stay tuned. We'll see you in a second. Man, we can get so lost in the social media world and just everything that's going around us. It's totally human nature. Life moves by so fast that we forget about what are we here for. And I got hit smack in the face with that reality about 24 hours ago when just a friend of ours, they're a young family and they have two kids. One is two daughters. One's 5 years old. One's 3 years old. 5-year-old is mentally handicapped. And then that 3-year-old baby girl has a brain tumor. Okay. And we'll show her at the end, but there she is right there. Elizabeth Caro is her name. And the brain tumor is inoperable. Doctors have done everything they can to help this young girl, and now they've sent her home. And I've been in touch with the mother the last 24 hours or so, and it's been just heart-wrenching to know that they're going to lose their baby girl soon, probably within the next few days or so. Got some more thoughts on that, but I just want to frame, as really we should, everything that we do during our days, faced with that reality of we are going to die. Life is just a blink of an eye. And as the Latin poet famously says, quid hoc ad eternitatem. What is this in relation to eternity? Like, what does this actually matter when you look at eternity? So anyway, how about that for just an open, Michael? How are you doing today, sir?
Well, now I'm depressed and sad, but at the same time, I find a lot of consolation in a great deal of things around us. So I would say optimistic. I'm good.
Optimistic, man. It's just like, this is the Lacrimarum Valley, the Valley of Tears. That's what it is. We're here today and we're meant for a reason. So knowing that, which is the whole perspective of what we do here at Catholic Champion, we look at what's going on in the political cultural world because there's a lot happening, unprecedented amount of events and happenings and things moving and changing within institutions. They need to be constantly looked at from the point of view of a Catholic lens, which is the lens looking at the fact that, like we just said, we're going to die and we're going to be judged in front of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And how do we approach that? So that being said, okay, topic for the day, America first. You've heard it a million zillion times, specifically more since Trump took the escalator down in 2015, over 10 years ago. America first, America first. We are America first movement. Trump won 3 times on the America first campaign slogan. When you first heard that term, Michael, what did you think and what struck you?
Well, the very first thing that came to my mind was anti-globalism, because what was he responding to? Why was he saying America first? He was saying America first because there's a system that's been set up over the course of the last century that is designed specifically to institute and implement a singular world form of governance that is built around socialist ideologies. So when I hear America first, the very first thing that comes to mind is anti-globalist, anti-socialist. And with that in mind, I'm all for it.
As the majority of Americans were, and it resonated with the forgotten American voter, and we got Trump in. Okay. However, okay, we are now about almost a year into this or 8 months into this second term of Trump. Okay. And the America first term has been under scrutiny. Okay. First to see as President Trump, what's going on? Is he leading us in the American first way? Okay. You also have, this was just broke last week. You have the whole Israel-Hamas war. Okay. Which has been front and center the past couple months. And we're going to talk about that briefly for an update. It's made a lot of us step back and think, okay, who are we as Americans? What are we doing? What are we doing there? What's our role? And is it MAGA or is it MAGA? Make Israel great again or make America great again? Or how's it all interplay? Okay, you have therefore, this broke last week. The ADL, okay, the Anti-Defamation League, has declared, get ready. So if you were an American First enthusiast, love the term, you are now considered by the Anti-Defamation League, ADL, as an extremist and anti-Semitic, okay? ADL claimed on its website that the slogan has its roots in the World War II era America First Committee. We're going to talk about the history, but this is what they say. It claimed the phrase is used by extremists in a racist, xenophobic, anti-Semitic way. The slogan America First gained new life during Donald Trump's rise to power. Trump used it to promote American nationalism, non-intervention abroad, in opposition to immigration and globalization. It's kind of you hinted at, Michael. Conservative circles, America First is seen as a patriotic rallying cry, blah, blah, blah. Continues. ADL is one of the most influential Zionist organizations in the United States. It operates. Marxist. What's that?
They're Marxists too.
Yeah, you know that way better than I do. And what do you explain that? Just for the who founded them or researched them?
No, I mean, you look at their ideologies and you look at the things that they're proposing. They consistently are promoting things. They talk about, oh, we're Israel first and we're all for protecting Jews and Judaism. But the fact of the matter is they're nothing but a legal firm out there protecting and defending Marxist ideologies in the name of defending Judaism. So that's really what that's all about.
Very important. That's a great background for this is who's saying that. Okay. Now let's look at the donors. Okay. So they've picked up this term, America First. It's bad. It's extremist. It's xenophobic. They've just labeled this as it recently in the last couple of weeks. It operates mainly through tax deductible donations. So it's a 501c3, also corporations, foundations. Major donors include Apple, Uber, JP Morgan, James Murdoch, the Ford Foundation, the Adelson Family Foundation, which is a big, it's a Jewish PAC. Miriam Adelson, they gave like over $100 million to President Trump right towards the end of the last cycle for him and his campaign. The group made about $105 million in revenue in 2022. That's insane. Okay. Speaking from a person, I'm involved in a nonprofit. We're always, we rely on the donation of the people to continue our mission. We're grateful for that. I know what it's like to raise money. $105 million coming in 2022. Wow. That's impressive. Government funding covers only a small portion, while the full list of donors remains undisclosed. Okay. The decision comes, okay, whatever. It just goes on. It's now the ruling, it's now considered an extremist term in their estimation. Okay. So let's look at this. America First. Coming back from, I want to pose the question to you and Michael. Can a Catholic hold this term? Okay. Is this an okay term to hold as someone who believes in the teachings of Jesus Christ? And how do I apply it today? Because yes, it came up in the news again just recently when our dear Vice President, Catholic, had a little back and forth with Pope Francis. Let's play that clip.
This old school, and I think it's a very Christian concept, by the way, that you love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens in your own country. And then after that, you can focus and prioritize the rest of the world. A lot of the far left has completely inverted that. They seem to hate the citizens of their own country and care more about people outside their own borders. That is no way to run a society. And I think the profound difference that Donald Trump brings to the leadership of this country is the simple concept, America First. It doesn't mean you hate anybody else. It means that you have leadership. And President Trump has been very clear about this, that puts the interests of American citizens first. In the same way that the British Prime Minister should care about Brits and the French should care about the French, we have an American president who cares primarily about Americans, and that's a very welcome change.
What is President Xi doing? What is Vladimir Putin?
He's looking after the Chinese. Putin is looking after the Russians.
Because he took America First, this concept, okay, and he applied from his Augustinian training or his catechetical training, J.D. Vance. Yeah. Apply the term Ordo Amoris, which is where it originates from, St. Augustine, and slapped it on the America First as his interpretation, has kind of the Catholic connection between the political movement and this Catholic philosophical principle. Comments?
Well, it is a Catholic philosophical principle. Now, I know that Pope Francis objected to it, and then he gave some meandering explanation as to why he objected or what he thought that the Ordo Amoris was. But the fact of the matter is, it's a long-standing not only tradition but teaching of the church that you love God first and above all things. Then you love neighbor as yourself, and all of this comes in a concentric series of order. You know, as a husband and father, my first priority is to my wife, and then to my children, and then to my extended family, and then to my community. So if we're going to look at things in terms of the order of charity, and we have to remember, this isn't just like, I mean, look, I love all men, all mankind. I want the salvation of all. But I am a human being who is capable of affecting only those closest to me. So with my direct ability and strengths and responsibilities, my first responsibility is to my family. I have to maintain the household. I have to bring in an income so that I can feed and house and clothe my wife and my children. From that, I then look to my church and I say, you know, I've taken care of my family. I wish to take care of my parish, and I tithe. I give 10% of what I pull in. From there, I can look at my community and say, is there anything that I have left that I can give to those who are in need around me? But it would be inverted for me to start with the people that are on the opposite end of town and say, you know what, there's a homeless guy all the way across the state that he doesn't have a place to stay. He doesn't have any food. I need to go find him and give him a house and then take that from my family. That would be inverted. And in fact, it would be a dereliction of my duty to my wife and my children. So there necessarily has to be an order of charity. Now, this order of charity, it starts individually, it works to the community. We as a country have an obligation. The first obligation of any leader, whether it's a president, a king, a prime minister, whatever his role is, his first duty are to the people for whom he was elected or appointed to serve. That's his first duty. This is what America First means. It means we as Americans have to focus on properly governing this country and taking care of our people in the best way that we can at the lowest level possible. The church has always taught the principle of subsidiarity. Well, this is subsidiarity in action. That's what the Ordo Amoris is. You know, when you're on an airplane, what's the first thing that happens when a stewardess gets up there and starts talking to the people in the cabin? She says,
I know what you want to say, but I'm going to say it. It's put your phone on airplane mode. For
right.
whatever reason that is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then after that,
yeah, go ahead. What's after that?
After that, she talks about the oxygen mask. In the event of an emergency, oxygen masks are going to deploy. They always tell you to secure yours before you do your children. Why?
Right.
Because if you pass out, you can't help anybody else. So you secure yours, then you secure your children's, then you secure the people next to you and around you, and you help after that. But you can't help anybody if you're dead. So again, as a husband, as a father, as a breadwinner, my responsibility is first to my immediate family and then those outside of that. America First is no different from that.
So it's obviously it's a principle rooted in the natural law, okay, which means
Right.
that you can attain to this principle through the light of reason alone. It's in the subconscious of the culture, shown in that example you just showed with the face mask or the mask on the plane, right? The oxygen mask. Everybody gets it. You know, you take care of obviously your own thing. Now, this principle can obviously be so it can be used on the other side, okay? It can be corrupted, okay, weaponized, okay, in its own way. Like, let's go back to the origins from a political point of view. We talked about the theological origins of it, which go all the way back to St. Augustine, Ordo Amoris, right? Correctly ordered love, or Ordo Caritatis, as St. Thomas Aquinas would say. Let's talk about it, how it originated here in the United States. When was it first used? Again, it was not first used by President Trump in 2015. He smartly recycled it and won on it 3 times. Okay.
Yep.
This goes back to really, in a lot of ways, to the 1850s, all the way back to the 1850s. with the creation of the America Party, the Know Nothing Party, okay, which, ironically enough, as Michael and I were chatting up before, this was really an anti-Catholic party, okay? The context of what's going on in the United States back in the 1850s, prior to the American Civil War, is you had the immigration of a large number of Irish and German Catholics to the United States between 1840 and 1860. And there was this clash going on between the Catholic and the Protestants. Violence occasionally erupted at the polls, okay? Protestants alleged that Pope Pius IX had contributed to the failure of the liberal revolutions of 1848 in Europe. And they also alleged that he was an enemy of liberty, democracy, and republicanism. False statement.
Well,
One Boston minister described, one more line, it said, one Boston minister described Catholicism as, quote, the ally of tyranny, the opponent of material prosperity, the foe of thrift, the enemy of the railroad, wow, the caucus and the school. These fears encourage conspiracy theories regarding papal intentions of subjugating the United States through a continuing influx of Catholics controlled by Irish bishops obedient to Rome. That is one of the origins. Well, I'm going to go back probably, but one of the earlier origins of the America First theme. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Comment on that.
So first of all, I want to correct something. They were actually right that he did contribute to opposition to what they called republicanism, because you have to remember republicanism, as it was defined in the mid 1800s, had more to do with the republics that they Karl Marx and others were trying to establish in the model of Plato's Republic. They were looking to recreate what Plato had established as the bedrock of their communist revolution. This is why USSR stands for United Socialist Soviet Republics. So that's the republicanism that they're responding to. So they were correct in that respect, because yes, he was absolutely adamantly opposed to that, because the republics that they were looking to establish were secular republics established for a ground up kind of political organization, a socialist ideology for politics. So there is that. However,
so Pius IX was, in fact, against, more or less to a degree, the revolutions in Europe.
Completely.
Because they were secularist republic. What would be the difference for our audience? Really, the difference between a secular republic and a godly republic?
So the republic that we consider when we're talking about the republic in the United States is a form of governance that is modeled after the Roman Republic. Okay, that's what we are talking about. Plato, on the other hand, had established a form of republic. If you've read Plato's Republic, what you see is it's almost like a utopia, where you have the philosopher king who is so grandiose and so giving that he doesn't take any salary. He just, out of the goodness of his heart, rules the people with pure virtue. And then the oligarchs under him, out of the pure goodness of their hearts, without any malice toward the people, only desire to see the good so it is a utopia. It's never, in fact, if you read the Republic, you realize it was never intended to be established as a form of governance. Plato was looking to try and explain the nature of the soul and the nature of the person through what would be a virtuous society. So he took the soul and expanded it and said, okay, let's consider this as a society so that we can then understand what a republic is, or understand what the human soul is. But the problem is the socialists, the Enlightenment thinkers, they took that idea and they said, oh, this is a great form of government, which is completely false. It was never intended to be a form of government. So that's the problem with it.
But obviously, republic is a valid form of government. 100%.
Well, yeah, what we're talking about goes back to ancient Rome, whereas what they're talking about goes to Plato's idea of a republic established in his book.
Got it. So anyway, so you go back, there was that opposition. So that, the Know Nothing Party, 1850s, they took advantage of it. They felt the tension between the influx of immigrants, Catholic immigrants.
Yep.
And they created this, frame, America first. We don't want foreign influence. Okay. But you actually go back
Not just
farther.
foreign influence. They specifically didn't want Catholic influence because they were Protestants, but they were adamantly anti-Catholic Protestants. And I don't have the information directly in front of me, but I do remember reading that Freemasonry had a strong influence with the Know Nothing nativist parties. So when you start to consider what we're up against, it started off as kind of a Freemasonic anti-Catholic movement. So when they were talking America first, it was an exclusionary type of America. It was an America that didn't want any kind of real virtuous Catholic influence. But today, especially within the Trump administration and Trump's MAGA movement, there are a lot of Catholics involved. And he wants Catholicism to be involved. In fact, he just recently gave a statement where he was talking about how so many Catholics, specifically Irish Catholics, had been Medal of Honor winners in the United States. And he said, this is an amazing statistic. So he has a great respect for the Catholic Church, and he doesn't want to be exclusionary, but what he wants is to restrict our focus from a global perspective to a United States perspective. Whereas the Know Nothings and the nativists wanted to not only close the borders, they wanted to just say, you know what, we don't want any kind of Catholic influence specifically. They were fine with immigrants as long as they were Protestants. They just didn't want Catholics coming in.
Also, too, it's probably stems from that fear, which was played upon by bad actors, Marxists or whatever, Masonic actors. It's predicated on the fact that they understand the papacy as this is, of course, 1850s. So when the Pope still had his armies, right? His little armies, right? And there was that, the Papal States, right? Which weren't effectively gone to 1870 or in 1920, 9 with the Lateran Treaty.
Well, the Papal States got,
1870, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it was Victorio Emmanuel who pretty much eliminated them.
So the Pope had his armies, right? His temporal power. So there probably was that confusion. Okay, what's the Pope's idea? What's he going to try to do? Whatever. Even though it was absurd, they would actually try to invade the United States, but they played upon that fear. So, and they came up with the phrase "America First." But I'm going to actually go back. I think it goes back even farther to the founding father of the country, George Washington, who warned, who understood that America, yes, we care about the rest of the world, but in his farewell address, he had that statement he warned about believing about foreign entanglements. And he said, believing that binding alliances could draw the young nation into costly European conflicts, compromise its independence, cloud its judgment with, quote, excessive partiality or dislike for other nations. He advocated for temporary alliances only in times of extreme danger and encouraged the United States to maintain a policy of neutrality and free trade, focusing on its own domestic affairs. You could argue that, again, going back to really George Washington, America first, right? But I think it's always got to be seen through the Catholic philosophical understanding of the Ordo Moris as Augustine and Thomas Aquinas taught. Fair enough?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree.
Okay. So use George Washington. Then you go to the 1850s, American Know Nothing parties. And then it serves its head really in 1916, again, when Woodrow Wilson was running for president. World War I was going on. And our very own friend, Christopher Mannion, whose dad literally ran the group Catholics for Woodrow Wilson way back, 100 and some years ago. He ran on that policy of America first. We're going to stay out of the war. Of course, Woodrow Wilson, who was a crazy real socialist, flip-flopped, and then a year after his presidency, by April of 1917, America had already declared war on Germany, and he had reversed that old policy. But he did run on the policy of America first. Okay, so it's been used, as you can see, all throughout American history in different ways, shape, or form. So I think it's a little off the mark for the ADF to all of a sudden say, it's an extremist policy, and if you use it, you're anti-Semitic. Okay,
Look, the ADF is going to label anything that goes against what they want as anti-Semitic. It doesn't really matter what it is.
They are, but it works. Of course it does, but it does have that stigma. I think it's changing. Or maybe you're thinking it's
how much influence has the ADF had in the last 15, 20 years? I mean, honestly.
True that. It's gone down. But when you start saying it's an extremist policy, America first, because, you know, some people have used it as for their own ends, right? With not the best intentions. So I think it has to be constantly purified, and we're seeing it right now. Let's take it into the concrete. The first part of the show was really philosophical. Okay, what is America first? How does Thomas Aquinas understand it? How does our Catholic Church? We can hold to it as a Catholic principle. You see President Trump, okay? Let's get ourselves in the picture. We've had this war with Ukraine going on for about 3-4 years now. Or if you go back farther to 2014 when Obama gave away Crimea, it really originated with President Obama, okay? It's now 2025. You have roughly 7,000 people dying per week, okay? Trump campaign said he was going to stop this war right away. And you probably saw images, we're going to see them in a second, of all these leaders in Trump's office, and he's trying to negotiate the end of the war. You may be, as America First person, like, what are we doing? Okay, why is Trump even wasting his time there? I mean, did that strike you? What did you see, Michael, when you thought when he had Trump get all those European leaders together in the White House? What were your first thoughts?
Okay, well, so I don't see a conflict between America First and the president trying to broker peace. I don't see a conflict there. Because honestly, what we see with the president trying to broker peace rather than declaring war and sending American troops overseas, that would not be America First. But for Trump to say, okay, look, we're going to try and broker peace. Why? Because in peace, there is prosperity. But in war, I mean, what's the purpose of war? To kill people and break things. And what happens when you kill people and break things? You lose resources, you lose time, you lose energy, you lose efficiency. So it only drags down the entire world for there to be a war, not to mention the human cost and the moral cost and everything else that goes along with it. So there's no conflict between America First and holding this meeting because he's not committing troops. He's simply saying, look, let's try and figure out a way to get peace so that we can all prosper, so that we can all work together for the common good. I see this as a good thing. I don't see this as negative.
100%. It's almost like, so obviously, like, why are you even saying this? Like, duh. I mean, of course, you can stop this war. But I think we've got to come full circle because Trump took a lot of knocks, even like some degrees from Pope Francis, who's kind of like button heads on the Ordo Mores. Is Trump going to really care about the rest of the world? We can't be just focused on yourself. That's not Trump, at least in this scenario, right? He's been, and I really applaud him. He was literally scheduled to go to his vacation in New Jersey, cancel that vacation to take care of this matter. I mean, that really bothers him. And I want to show that clip. Let's talk about, first that image of what I wanted to sink into the audience about what it's not perfect president by any means. We know that. But at the same time, how blessed we were that we won, that we had this choice as opposed to the other choice because of the elections and all of your hard work last November. Taking the image, let's play that clip of the European leaders coming in to sit down at the White House. As you're watching this, I want you just to remember that never before in the history, not even in the Second World War, did we have this many European leaders coming to the White House. Okay? And here President Trump is.
To be fair, there weren't that many European leaders at the time. World War
That's
II.
true. Who could probably make it over, right? That's true.
Right.
So he meets Putin in Alaska. Great. August 15th, Feast of the Assumption. That's already a big win. First time a Russian president has ever come out of U.S. Or at least visited Alaska. Meets with Putin, okay? As Zelensky into the White House on Monday, 2 days ago. And boom, as Steve Bannon would call it, the chaperones of Zelensky show up to the White House to oversee what's going on. And, you know, as you're looking at this, Michael, again, thoughts on that and the significance that all those people showed up there to the Oval Office, to the leader of the free world, knowing that President Trump had the power.
Well, I think I think what it really shows is that there's a real commitment and a real desire on the part of the leadership of many countries in Europe to see real peace brokered. And I think that's...
Is there though? Is there? Because this whole war is, I think, is exactly the opposite of the America First policy. The
war is, sure.
This was allowed, and this was fueled by globalist leaders.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the war was it's Putin,
evil. It's absolutely evil.
It is. Putin was a big part of it, but then you also had a lot of Biden trying to look. Ukraine is known as a massive money laundering country. There's a lot of black funds that go into Ukraine that get funneled back. And we do know that a lot of that money came back into the coffers of the Democrat Party. A lot of this came through USAID. A lot of this came through certain backdoor deals that were brokered for corporations that, may or may not have actually existed. So there are a lot of questions financially about Ukraine and what Ukraine is and what it has been trying to do, especially under Zelensky's leadership. Why is it that he keeps talking about peace, but then backs out of any kind of deal and tries desperately not to have any peace? It seems to me that he is trying to perpetuate the war. So I think that what we have to realize is that there are some who are very much willing to at least be part of the conversation, but all of them coming here to the White House and coming to the United States at least shows that they know where the real power is, and they know where what has to happen and who has to be involved in order for peace to be brokered.
Why is Trump doing this? Okay. Why? And I think he gave a very significant insight yesterday, talking to the reporters about why he is spending his time, stopping this war. Let's play that clip.
I want to end it. We're not losing American lives. We're not losing American soldiers. We're losing Russian and Ukrainian, mostly soldiers. Some people, as missiles hit wrong spots or get lobbed into cities like Kiev and towns. But, if I can save 7,000 people a week from being killed, I think that's I want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole. But if I can get to heaven, this will be one of the reasons. Well, I think I saved a lot of lives with India, Pakistan. They were going at it. The planes were being shot down. That was going to be maybe a nuclear war if I let that go. And I did that through trade.
So volume was a little low, but if you heard that, Trump said, look, 7,000 lives being lost. They're not American lives, okay? But they're people, okay? Trump understands humanity, and my absolute respect for him. But he goes farther. He says, look, I want to get to heaven. He's like literally thinking, as every human being should be doing, by the way, especially as you get older. Okay, am I going to heaven or am I going to hell? And pause and just take that in for a second. You have the leader of the world, not just the free world anymore. It's the leader of the world. He's the most powerful person on the planet, okay? At least in temporal power. The Pope's pretty up there too, right? But sure. You have him talking to a cable news station, one of the biggest in the world, Fox, which still is one of the biggest, actually having a conversation about how am I going to get to heaven? Okay. Wow. Amazing. What do you think about that clip, Michael?
Well, I think it shows that he has the right priority anyway, to say that he wants to get to heaven, which means he has at least a natural desire to do the right thing. What the right thing is, that's a prudential matter. That's a prudential judgment. But he does have that desire to save lives, to stop the fighting, to stop the war. And because of that, he views doing the right thing and working toward the right thing as a step towards, our Lord was very clear. He said, if you love me, you will keep my commandments, and nobody comes to the Father but through me. So I think that he sees putting an end to the fighting as a part of keeping God's commandments.
All right. So yeah, 100%. I think we miss that sincerity. I wish we had that sincerity on other leaders, just to come out and like openly talk about, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing. I'm trying to, Trump has always won people over with his, I guess, vulnerability in that sense, just saying it like it is, saying his real thoughts. That was what he won on. Now let's shift over to another whole part of a different world, okay? Which has people scratching their heads in a lot of ways. Like, what is going on with this? Like, what is President Trump doing? What are we doing as a country? And it involves the whole America-Israel situation, okay? The war Israel against Gaza, remember, October 7th. Let's just refresh the facts. October 7th, 2023, you had that sneak attack by Hamas into Israeli territory, and they took a bunch of hostages, which I think, 50 of them are still being held, 18 dead, and another 15 that are alive. Apparently, they're still there. Okay, so they have the Hamas terrorist organization, absolutely terrorist. We know that. Are in Gaza. They have these hostages. They attacked on October 7th. It has since come out, as we reported and brought this to light, from the former director of national intelligence, General Michael Flynn, said on the War Room, which picked up on all the other outlets, that people in the Israeli government knew about the October 7th attack. They knew it was coming. We have IDF soldiers who have come out and have said that they were told to stand down, okay, during this attack. Okay, you've got to take that into consideration before even looking at this whole Israel-Gaza war, okay? That's the facts. That's what's happened, okay? 2 years later, you have the situation where you have roughly 2 million people that are in Gaza, okay? And there's reports coming out. Good people on both sides of this had totally different viewpoints, okay? Some are saying that the starvation is completely caused by Hamas, and some are saying that the starvation is directly caused by the IDF, okay? You have our Catholic Church leaders down to really a T, from Father Romanelli at Gaza, at the Holy Family Church in Gaza, who had his church bombed, okay? The water tanks outside his church were shot, okay? He's been speaking about this. You have the Cardinal Pizzaballa, okay, who's the Latin Patriarch overseeing the situation there, has been talking about the oppression there, about the starvation, the genocide taking place. And then last but not least, you have our newly elected Pope Leo, who's been so strong about speaking up that this has got to end, okay? But then you have the other side who's saying this is completely Hamas controlled. It's a mess. What do you think about this situation going on right now today? And how are we, if we're America first, what's our interest here and how do we operate, Michael?
Well, I've been asking the question, what's our interest in the Middle East for a long time? What's our interest in Israel and all that kind of stuff? So the bottom line for me is that America first simply means we are here to protect our interests before we go out and try and defend anybody else. Why we have an overabundance of interest in Israel, say over what happened in Rwanda, or several other areas where there have been just horrific atrocities that were committed, major civil wars and massive infighting within different countries that Americans just didn't even know about. Congress knew about it. The intelligence community knew about it. But when you start to look at what happened on October 7th, the fact that intelligence agencies all knew the attack was coming, they let it come, they let it happen. And the question is why? Why did they let it happen? And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that Israel was looking to draw American interest, to draw us into a conflict there. And again, why would they do that? Because they don't have the moral high ground to go in and commit whatever they want to do, whatever forces they need to take over that territory. But if America was involved, they would have the moral high ground, or at least they would have the moral perception of rightness by going into that territory and taking it over. So it's a lot of it is it's an influence game designed to get America to approve of whatever it is that they want to do. And I think that that's a dangerous game, and it's certainly something that we shouldn't be playing. Why are we playing favorites with one nation over another? Some people will say, well, these are the bad guys and these are the good guys. But the whole idea of black hats and white hats on a national scale, it usually isn't as clear and as cut as a lot of people want it to be. So this really, for me, boils down to what's America's interest? Why should we be involved? What can we do to mitigate damage without committing U.S. forces? And that, I think, is probably the best point of view. How do we broker peace? Why? Because I don't want people to be killing each other over there. And I certainly don't want to see our holy sites destroyed. And I would love to see the Catholics and the Christians in the Middle East protected. But from a national standpoint, you have to take into consideration a whole host of other issues before you can commit forces. And I think that Trump is handling it very well.
He's handling it well, but it's I think you asked what our interest in the Middle East is, okay? And we talked about this before many times. I at the end of the day, we're Christians, we're Catholics. We don't want I don't care whoever in charge over there. We don't want our holy sites destroyed. Okay, right. That's where Christ walked and talked and preached, and and in fairness, when the followers of Muhammad, were there, they weren't exactly nice, except for Bethlehem, which, by the way, that's where they actually didn't touch the church in Bethlehem when they because they went to the church which Constantine built, and they saw that they had 3 wise men who looked like Persians. So the Mohammedans respected it. I said, "Oh, must be a good place here." So they didn't destroy the Church of Nativity, which is one of the reasons, one of the oldest churches in the Holy Land. That being said, a lot of the other places took some beatings. Okay. So you could argue right now, rightly so, that the 1948 state of Israel is the better option between having some radical jihadists, Islamists in control of the Holy Land. If that's the case, assuming that's the case, therefore, to a certain degree, we want to have Israel protected. Could you make that case?
Well,
from that point of view alone, it's not because that what's the heresy? Help me out here.
The desire to build the Zionism, the desire to build the third temple, and all that.
The Catholic Church is the new Israel. That's the point. Okay. But from the purely pragmatic point of view, because these are biblical places that we don't want destroyed. Okay. Therefore, Israel is our friend in that sense.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So if you want to look at it from that point of view, we could take the pragmatic approach and say, sure.
From that point of view alone, but the fact of the matter is, we're being played. I believe we're being played to a certain degree, because I think this genocide happening in Gaza. Okay, and that's I'm not on the ground. Okay, I'm just like you guys. We're all trying to figure this out. I'm hearing both sides. Good people that I know on both sides of the issue saying it's the IDF causing this, it's the Hamas causing this. Okay, but one thing I think is absolutely clear is I think this has got to be talked about so much more. I mean, you just had the doctor who was on Theo Vaughn, and listened to him 7 days ago. Doctor, he's from Milwaukee, who volunteered to go over to Gaza. He worked in the hospital for 2 months. Listen to the guy's stories. You be the judge. You tell us. This guy's seen it with his own eyes. Okay. He has mass casualties every single day, where he has 100 people coming in. He was talking about the bullet shots. These are direct hits to their eyes, or to their heads, to their neck areas, little children. Okay. This is serious stuff. And it's all stems around when they give the food, when it's time to get the food, and everyone runs down like cows to get the food. It's gone in 7 minutes, and that's it. And there's the IDF shoots apparently to keep crowd control, but something is not right. And this latest order by President Netanyahu to come and occupy Gaza, okay, which again,
did you see, by the way, the footage showing all the Israelites, the Jews that are protesting against Netanyahu and his war?
I absolutely did. That's big, by the way, because to protest in Israel is different than to protest in the United States of America. Okay. To show your face on the streets of Israel in opposition to the government in a so-called democracy, it's not the same thing, people. It's one of the most controlled states. Let me remind you that I guess you could argue that. I mean, they were, out of all the countries in the world, they were the most vaccinated country in the world. Israel had the tightest control over that. I think they got up to like their entire population was jabbed. If we can say that now on this platform, I forget. they were jabbed for like 3 or 4 times. I mean, they were so mathematical about it. They're extremely controlled. Okay. So for them to get that many people in the streets in opposition to the war, that says a lot.
Yep. Yep. It says that not only is there opposition from the outside, but there's a ton of opposition from the inside. It is not anti-Semitic to oppose the war that's taking place between Hamas and Israel. It's not anti-Semitic because the people of Israel themselves do not want to be involved in this war anymore. They want Netanyahu to stop. So I think that I think that again, we have to look at the situation. It's not cut and dried. It's not cut and dried, and it's not easy to discern what to do because the situation is extremely complex and it's very fluid. Our friend Jason Jones is very clear about the people that are suffering there. Cardinal Pizzaballa is also very concerned about the people that are suffering there and the destruction and the loss of life and the loss of food and all of it is something that we have to take into consideration. But at the end of the day, it's not clear who is involved, who is doing what, why it's happening the way that it's happening. And to even say that, well, Hamas attacked, so therefore they're the bad guys. Look, Hamas is a problem. It's a mess. It's a massive network of evil Islamism. But the real issue is that they were able to attack because they were allowed to. And why did that happen? Because they wanted to draw more nations into a bigger conflict than what they had originally had in mind. So this is it's a big play, and it's something that we have to look at very carefully.
We have to. It's urgent. I mean, you have the situation's humanitarian crisis. There's a genocide happening. Okay, whoever's causing it, fine, Hamas or IDF. Okay, but I might get in trouble for saying this, but it almost feels to a certain extent, because we know this from Netanyahu himself, okay, who's been talking about his desire to make Israel expand, and he wanted to take over Gaza. He wanted to move those people out of there. That has been his stated aim. He said it a zillion times. It's almost like those hostages are double hostages, okay? It seems like this. Please correct me, audience or world, if this is not the case. It feels like they're being held by two people. Yes, by Hamas, but yes, it's been ideal for the 1948 Benjamin Netanyahu government to hold them as well, because it gives them a reason to go in there and move. Okay. Now, why are we spending our time on America's show talking about so much about a foreign government? Because I think it goes back to the amount of hold that it has here in the United States. Okay. Which goes against the Ordo Amoris. Okay, as far as a Catholic, Ordo Amoris applies for me in the situation. We have a serious situation where people are hungry, okay? And to quote Thomas Aquinas, and I think he nails it right away, it's not that we just focus on our own self all day long and that's it in my own world. Aquinas says, in this Ordo Caritatis, God should be loved first and foremost, followed by oneself and then one's neighbors, with a more intense affection for those more closely related. However, there are specific situations which prompt me to go out of my way to go to the aid of my neighbor. That would be this instance. When you have kids dying by the hundreds like this, we got to drop what we're doing and focus on there and stop that, okay? And I think as the situation unfolds, we have got to continue to pray and just be honest about this, okay? The worst thing we can do is to slander somebody or say, you're not allowed to talk about this because you're anti-Semitic, label a phrase on them, and then tell them to shut up. That's no bueno.
Well, and it's never a good idea just to shut someone down simply because they have an opinion or a thought opposite to yours. That's just not good policy. But I think that, again, this is a situation that's got to be carefully looked at. It's got to be carefully considered. Yes, there's a humanitarian crisis, and if there is anything that I am for, it is for defending and assisting those people who are suffering because of the conflict between two sides. And I have a very strong desire to help those people as much as I can. But again, I can't help everybody.
And for doubters out there, this is not us, Michael Hichborn and John Yep and the Catholics cozying up to Hamas. Okay. the Catholic Church is the biggest opponent of radical and also Islam. Okay. Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. Okay. And believe me, we're going to continue to talk about that because there is a mass invasion of Europe and of this country by those people who do not want to integrate, but want to take over. Okay. Hold that thought. But we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Okay. Talk about both these. So we go through just a kind of rapid fire to kind of get to the end of the show, but just some other topics that are hitting the news. Don't want to miss them. I want to get your comments on Michael that we're seeing here played out. You got this. This is up your line of work, Michael. You got President Trump, who let's pray for this guy. Okay, don't forget to pray for the president. I was at church this morning and just had this. So cool to see people gathering for the rosary before morning mass and just hear them say, "We pray for the president of the United States. We pray for our elected leaders." That's awesome. So people like that in the pews, which are sustaining this country, kudos to them. But here you got Trump, who signs an executive order requiring an audit of every NGO which relies on federal funding. Do you think that's a great idea, Michael?
I think it's a fantastic idea. I mean, I'm all for this because, as you know, I've been investigating these NGOs for a very, very long time. One of the things that I can tell you consistently and thoroughly is that these NGOs are all aligned with the United Nations. And I am thoroughly opposed to the United Nations. I can't stand the United Nations. I would love to see it bulldozed into the ocean. So when you look at these NGOs, what are they trying to do? They're trying to establish a form of global governance through the finances of the United States under the auspices of UN programs and UN ideologies. To investigate them will expose not only the deep state, it'll expose the globalist agenda, because you'll start to see these networks, you'll see the exchange of funds, you'll see the programs they're implementing, what the nature of the programs are, where they're going with these programs. This is stuff that I've been studying now for the last 20 years. I would love to see this start to finally come out. Now, in terms of the Catholic Church, what I want is to finally have exposed that these organizations are indeed pushing a population control agenda, because that's exactly what they're doing.
It's a win. I take that as a thumbs up for this order. That's a great executive order. Needs to be carried out, especially with how Catholic Charities use their millions of dollars the past years to aid and abet the illegal invasion of this country. Needs to be investigated to restore credibility to our beloved Catholic Church. All right, next piece here. Rapid fire comments here. Let's throw that clip up. Watch this, or it's about the IVF, not the IDF here. IVF is a serious offense to God and the moral order. The video is going to make you sick as we get this up. Okay, watch this video and I'm going to comment briefly.
Donor. 28 of those eggs survived the thawing process and then were fertilized. 12 of those fertilized eggs did not develop into usable embryos. So that makes 16 embryos that were sent to PGT testing. And we just got in those PGT testing results. Starting with Joshua's side, his one embryo that was rated good to average came back as chaotic, which checks out. That one is no longer usable. This one, which was originally graded good, came back aneuploid. Chromosome 13 only had one in the pair. On my side, the one that was originally graded as bad indeed came back aneuploid. Its chromosome 13 also only had one in the pair. This one, which was originally graded as good, came back with no DNA detected. So that's no longer usable. This one, too, which was also originally graded as good, came back aneuploid. Chromosome number 4 only had one in the pair. Lastly, this one, which was originally graded good to average, came back as high mosaic. Chromosome number 2 had 3 when it was supposed to have 2. All in all, we're so happy that we decided to purchase as many frozen eggs as we could, 40, because that leaves us with these 10 embryos for 2 babies. And we're told that the majority of journeys take 2 to 3 transfers to get pregnant. We've decided which embryo on both sides that we want to transfer to our 2 surrogates. We'll keep you updated as we do the transfers and as we find out whether or not we're pregnant, and continue to be transparent of how many transfers it takes. But we're not going to share the sex of both babies until we're officially pregnant.
Get this guy out. I can't take this guy anymore. This is insane. This is sick. Okay. You have a gay man, okay, a homosexual man with his partner talking about purchasing embryos,
purchasing children.
Post-its.
Children.
children.
This is human trafficking. There is no other word for it. It's human trafficking. They are purchasing persons. They are purchasing people.
You can talk about America first all you want, about living it on the political stage as a political campaign slogan, as bringing world peace to the world. That's all wonderful. That is just the surface, people. America first must first and foremost mean America first in morality, okay? And what you just saw right there, that is undermining the republic, which should be found on natural law. It's it's horrible. There are no words.
No, there are no words. And I mean, first of all, well, I'm just going to say it. If I were president of the United States, I would push to illegalize people like that. I would push for the criminalization of homosexuality, transgenderism, and everything else, because these people have a twisted, sick, perverted sense of human nature. And because of that, they look to do things that are beyond what is, I mean, they're already engaged in acts against nature. So what do you think they're going to do when it comes to other human beings and other people? They're going to look at them as nothing but chattel. And they've got a twisted sense of other, because they are completely and totally folded in on themselves, focused on themselves for fulfillment of themselves. It is the most selfish, the most self-centered movement that has ever been devised. And what they do when they start looking at the purchasing of people, notice how he was pointing out the defects, saying this one's defective for this reason and this one's defective for that reason. These are people. These are children. Well, we don't want this embryo or that embryo. What do you think they're going to do with children that are born alive? What happens if one of those children that they purchase comes out not to be as perfect as they thought it was going to be? Well, they'll reject that one too.
It's sick. People, as much as we try to say America good, CCP, China evil, tell me, what's the difference? Okay? You have, yes, this mass harvesting of human organs going on in China every single day, specifically with the Uyghur people. Okay, you basically pay X amount of dollars and you can get whatever organ you want if you're rich, and they just harvest the person on the spot. What's the difference between that and this man with his sick post-its on the wall behind him, choosing which kind of human being he wants based on the physical qualities alone of the soul, right? There's no difference. Okay. And that's why democracies, which are not, or republics that are not founded on God, will also end up in totalitarianism the same way that socialism as Marxism is.
Yep.
You see played out. So anyway, we couldn't pass the show up without commenting on that. Okay. Briefly, let's just go to something a little more positive here. Let's throw that up there. That quote end off with this. This is reported usually from Shane, who's kind of a good friend on X with us. I don't know, but he's just between social media interactions. But he posts some great content. He put this up originally, put this graph up there. So the Catholic Church in the U.S. is witnessing its most significant wave of adult conversions in nearly 20 years, with 2025 numbers topping 150,000. So in 2022, which, interestingly enough, that's the year the Catholics for Catholics was founded. I'm glad we're part of the puzzle here, helping with that reversion. That's a good thing. But you have this mass swing going on there. Why is that, Michael Hichborn?
I think if you look at the numbers, the low was in what year? 2021. And then the massive upswing comes shortly after that. What was happening around that time period? What happened in 2021? We were locked down. And what happened when people were locked down? They were looking for something to watch. And I think that a lot of Protestants were exposed to Catholic media. I think they were exposed to the Catholic Mass because we had a lot of televised masses going on. And there was a lot of online discussion about religion that started in 2021. And from there, we have even further conversations and further discussions. And as the political scene the whole landscape was being shaped. And of course, you had the radical leftists that were trying desperately to censor everything. What happened? Well, a lot of Protestants were looking around going, what's happening? Why is there so much censorship? And what am I not being told? So they were looking for alternative forms of media, which led them to a lot of Catholic media, which led them to more exposure to the Catholic Church. And as they started exploring what effectively is the truth with regard to a lot of questions that they had been dodging for a long time, they started finding that the Catholic Church is true and that there are a lot more allies in the Catholic faith to fight against the globalists and the totalitarians that had taken over than they were finding within their own Protestant communities. And that, I think that that's part of why we saw such a massive upswing starting in 2021.
Of course, obviously, it's been pointed out. This is conversions. Okay, it does not show the chart of those who have left the church. Okay,
Right.
So you kind of really, to get a full picture, you're gonna have to juxtapose that with those who've left the church, but it's kind of hard to calculate in some way. But I think it is significant that, at least from the point of view of people stopping themselves, saying, "Okay, what's going on here? Where's the true church?" and making that conscious decision to come back or to choose the Catholic Church for the first time. That's awesome. We've seen that the macro stage with people on influencers who have become Catholic or become Catholic adjacent, okay, if you will. People like Tucker is really talking a lot about its faith, or other figures who just made the outright step towards Catholicism. Candace is one. But then also on the smaller levels, we see by the chart, people are coming back to the faith. That's good. Why is that good? Because the most important thing for the success of this republic, the best thing possible, is to have a Catholic who's on fire for his faith. That is the most patriotic thing you can do. The best thing you can do for your country is to love our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and be passionate about evangelization. And that's a good thing for America. Final comments, Michael, as we start to wrap up the show. You got some news coming up, I think, right? Monday. I think we're all going to be heads turned towards what's coming from Lepanto Institute on Monday morning. Is that correct?
That's correct. So Monday morning, we've got a major story that's coming out specific to Catholics, but it's going to be absolutely shocking. I can just say this. Hearing what I heard, I was shocked, and that's hard to do. So if I'm going to be shocked, I can guarantee you that what we've got coming out Monday is going to shock a lot of Catholics. And this touches on the hierarchy, including the most influential hierarchs in this particular country. So stay tuned.
For all the naysayers, when you have a sincere desire to help purify the church, and even if that means exposing some of the stuff that has been laid hidden, so Michael, you do a great job at that, maintain a positive spirit, that's good for all of us, right? Because we need that. We need to be brought to light. We need our shepherds and priests and bishops and holy fathers on fire and leading us. So we're looking forward to that news Monday coming out, because that's going to help the church overall. And Pope Leo, let's kind of remember, I just saw this before starting the show. Pope Leo has called for a day of fasting and prayer on August 22nd, which is the coronation of Mary. Okay. And really just ask for world peace. And I really just give him so much credit. I'm so grateful that we have a Holy Father that's talking about Jesus. And it's also slammed the Pachamama. Reminded us that we're not worshiping nature. So we're grateful to Pope Leo for that. So August 22nd, keep that day in your mind. And let's throw that picture of Elizabeth back on the screen here really fast. And we'll just kind of end with really a prayer for this. So again, this is the girl, if you're just joining in, she's a friend of Catholics for Catholics. And she, is 3 years old, and she has an inoperable brain tumor. They've done everything they can. The doctor has sent her home to just be with her parents. I was talking to her mom this morning, earlier today, and let me know that the hospice thinks that, she's on her last legs. Signs are really, organs are starting to fail. And it's really, really a sad situation. Just, breaks your heart, knowing that this life is so precious. All this talk and everything we do during the day, it's got to be just constantly had with this image of, we are here for such a short time. Life is so precious. and there's no room for hate for any of us in our hearts. There cannot be. Okay, we got to have the same attitude as Jesus Christ. Even our worst enemies is to forgive and try to get everyone to heaven. So let's end with a quick Hail Mary. Pray for the Caro family, if you will, if you join me now. Name the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Thank you for joining us. This is Catholic Champion, where we champion those people in the front lines who are fighting for Christ in the public square. We need more of that. We'll see you next week. God bless and fight on.